Let's have a lesson and discussion on this work. Follow the lesson for free and just pick up all the tips from the video. But if you're interested, I do have a sheet music edition of the first 4 Caprices from Legnani's Op.20, and there's a link for that in the description. Caprice number 4 is a very interesting piece because you'll see a lot of different interpretations, articulations, and tempos when you listen to a wide variety of players play the piece. And another thing I found about the piece as well is that initially, I could sight read through it and just play it initially. But once I started kind of raising the tempo a little bit and also started listening a little bit more carefully and recording it especially, I noticed that it was a little bit more difficult musically than I first anticipated. So although the technical skills involved in the piece aren't massive in any way, there's some musical considerations to consider. Let's just first talk about the musicality. So you'll hear lots of different articulations in the piece. Some people play it quite detached. Almost like a clockwork style kind of performance, even marking it with staccatos or something. Other people play it really smooth, and a little bit slower, getting almost a more Beethoven-esque kind of like vibe out of it. And then, of course, there's also the musical balance and the little rests within those little bass. Those little bass lines there. So there's some muting techniques that we can talk about as well. My approach to the piece is pretty legato for the most part, but with a little bit of pianistic kind of not blockiness, but it's not completely smooth legato. There's a little bit of that clockwork activity, feeling of intensity and activity in there, and almost a withheld energy there, or a contained energy. And so I think that if you play it, just ever so slightly detached, but still generally legato, you can get some of that as long as you're muting some of those basses and you're keeping it kind of tight and contained. You can get lots of contained energy, but at the same time, in many ways, quite flowing phrasing in some ways. So the other thing that I experimented lots with is that at first I was playing the upper line quite soft and really bringing out that bass line as like the melodic strength. But after a while and listening to the recording of it, I found like a more balanced approach where it's defined, all the voices are defined, but none are brought out more than others, actually helped with the overall phrasing of the piece, and also just that it's tough to control the texture a little bit because you're constantly doing this 2-figure upper voice while doing this lower voice. And it's quite difficult to shape it exactly how you want, although that's something to work on while you're practicing. Okay, and the other thing was the muting of the bass. To actually stop the bass note on that next measure. So when you play the downbeat of the next measure there, that your thumb goes back on that 5th string to mute that line. Mute. Do all of those things and talk at the same time. So quite a bit of muting on all those rests in the bass, and that's for the whole piece that you're just going to be going through and making sure you're maintaining those mutes and putting your thumb back on the string. And sometimes I'll mute the 6th string by placing my thumb on the 5th string but getting lots of flesh in there to mute that 6th string. Let me see if I can find where I do that. There, so on the downbeat of the 3rd measure, because I'm going to play the 5th string next, I don't want to rest my thumb on the 6th string to mute the 6th string, because I'd have to mute and then lift it up and then play the 5th string. So instead, you can see I'm resting on the 5th string, but my thumb is coming into the string deep enough that I'm actually muting that 6th string out. If you're not comfortable with muting technique just yet, or you're just getting into that level, my recommendation is you can practice the piece without it and then practice it very specifically in small chunks, working on the muting. So like really just like looping things. You know, and getting comfortable really nailing those mutes and just playing the upper voice and stopping there so that you can hear whether you've actually muted the bass exactly when you've played that upper voice. And if you stop right on the beat and let it sustain there, you'll hear it very clearly. Like, yeah, just the upper voice, no bass notes ringing out. Certainly the muting is the thing that brings this piece from like an early intermediate level into a later intermediate level, or of course in the hands of a professional to the advanced level. That's my discussion on the work. I think we can just do a small walkthrough now, and we can discuss a few things as we go. Of like specific movements in the left hand there, but keep in mind that there's guide fingers. Like when you shift up here, the first finger stays down, and then you shift down, the third finger stays down, and then you're kind of out of luck. You have to eventually move all the fingers, but for those shifts, guide fingers can help quite a bit. Do that from measure 8 one more time. Little bit of something to work on there. There's lots of moving bars here, but getting these fingers into the shape they're about to play before they play is really, really helpful. If they're like not prepared, then they're coming in from out of nowhere, you'll make an error and hit the wrong string. So you can see how my fingers are already in the shape, and then they just have to go down. Repeated material. Really soft here so you can crescendo. Now the original doesn't, in my edition I have in parentheses, I have a decrescendo and a piano again to get down again for the next crescendo. That's not marked in the original, but it's kind of implied by the repeat of the reduced texture and the marking of crescendo again. So I would really come down at the end of that. Start soft again. And it's a very abrupt. And then that original figure creeps in, which I really like that. Really reminds me of Beethoven. And then we have a little bit of flourish here. Tough sometimes because you're slurring into the beat. I find that sometimes I get like a little bit of a gallop to my slurs that don't sound, and then it stops sounding even and the rhythmic structure gets thrown. So you have to make sure you know that the actual hammer on itself is indicating the beat. otherwise it doesn't sound even. You'll get like a... and it starts to throw it a little bit. Another little funny thing there is muting the bass on the hammer-on, not on the note that you strike with the right hand. So you can see that you mute on the note, and it's tough at fast tempos. I'll mess that up lots at fast tempos. I'm not sure what I did in the performance there. I might have muted it by accident on the beat, but you actually want to mute it on the hammer-on itself. And then piano. Now, he has no marking for the final little thing, so you could continue to go soft. But I think that like a loud statement, soft, and then ending in the major key, I do it like a grand thing, because it's quite a grand gesture to like have this big, serious A minor work that doesn't really, let up from that minor feeling and tonality. And then at the end, just for the final cadence, to put us into the major key is quite the statement. So making it quite the statement, I think, is good. It's also a caprice, so you can have some of a little bit of energy where you might otherwise remain reserved. Awesome little piece. I really like this one. This is the piece that inspired me to start working on doing all of the Legnani caprices, but I'm going to start by just doing groups of 4, and then I'll eventually put them into one big collection. But for now, that's Caprice number 4.